Good everyone. We're holding here on Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph on the Marim. That's 7 lines before the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So the Dam of today is Kuf Gimel Amud Beis. So the Mishnah spoke about that whenever you write, even if you write a smaller amount than what you intended to write, that's what Rabbi Yehuda says. If you wanted to write a full word, and you only wrote 2 letters, you also chayiv. The examples he brought was that he wrote 2 different letters. He wanted to write Shimon, and he wrote Shin Mem. Since Shin Mem is also a word, is also a name, Shem, therefore he's Chai. The Gemara is going to ask that we find a Braisa, which means a bunch of opinions. How much a person is Chai when he wanted to do a large malacha, wanted to write a large word, and he did just a bit. And Rabbi Yehuda there says that even if you wrote 2 of the same letter, you also Chai. So how come in our Mishnah he only says if you wrote 2 of different letters? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Motzinu, Rabbi Yehuda says we find that you can have a small word which is part of a larger word, so you might intend to write a larger word, but if you wrote just a bit of it, you already did something useful. Says the Gemara, Ella, Rabbi Yehuda, Shtei Eisies vein Shtei Shem Yisudim Mechayev. Rabbi Yehuda says you only chayiv if you wrote 2 letters which are two different letters. Shtei Eisies vein Shem Echad, if you wrote 2 letters which are the same letter, Loi Mechayev in Achayev. But Tani, we have a Baraisa which brings a bunch of opinions, and there we see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that 2 of the same letter you also chayiv. So let's see the Baraisa. The Baraisa speaks about the Psukim which speak about a Korban Chatos, which one of the things you bring a Korban Chatos for is a Malacha on Shabbos. So it says if you did an Aveira, Va'asa Achas, if you did one of all the mitzvahs of the Hashem that you shouldn't do, Hashem told you not to do it and you did it, B'shoyeg, you're chayiv v'chatos. So the Mishnah, the pasuk starts off saying v'asa achas. You did one, seems like one complete aveira, for example, in malacha, and then later on it says v'asa meyachas mehena. You did from one of those, which means part. So it's confusing. Are you only chayiv if you did a complete aveira, or even if you did a partial aveira? V'asa achas, and you did one of the aveiros. You would think from this pasuk, Yochel, I would think, for example, on Shabbos, you're writing a word, you have to write the entire word you intended to begin with, only then you're chayiv. If you want to weave a clothing, it has to be the entire clothing. If you are making a sieve, you have to make the entire sieve. Says the second word in the pasuk, later on in the pasuk, if you did part of an Aveira, you're also chayiv. Okay? As if I would only have that pasuk, I would say, the smallest amount. I wrote 1 letter. I wove one thread. I made 1 box in the sieve. Then I'm already chayiv. That it has to be complete. So basically there's 2 words in the pasuk which contradict each other purposely, which are trying to tell you something. Okay, so what is it trying to teach you? You only chayiv basically if you did something which could be useful, although you intended to do more. So for example, you intended to write a long name, but you wrote 2 letters which could be a complete name. So it could be useful. Shem, Mishimoin, Mishmuel, Neach, Minocher, Don, Midaniel, God, Migadil. That's what we have in our Mishnah in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Comes the Bryce and says, Rabbi Yehuda Oimer. He argues on this. Even if he just wrote 2 letters of the same letter, Chayiv is also Chayiv. Why? Because sometimes we find words which have 2 of the same letters. Kigoin, sheish is a word. Teis, giving is a word. Ror is a word. Gag is a word. Choch is a word. All are words in the Torah. And therefore, since we have words, 2 of the same letter, which are meaningful, so you're chayiv even on 2 of the same letter. Amar Rabbi Yosi. Says Rabbi Yosi. No. You guys are getting too stuck on details. That's not the point. V'chi mishum kosev u'chayev. Are you chayev only for writing? The point is not writing. In the Mishkan, they didn't write to write a letter in a Megillah. That wasn't part of writing the Mishkan, making the Mishkan. Which part of writing do they have in the Mishkan? Mishkan. They would make a mark on the beams in the Mishkan. Lay the Ezu ben Zugay to know which is the match. So since the point is making a mark, so it doesn't matter. 2 marks. So let's see. If he just made a scratch. Achas, 1 scratch. You have 2 beams, one next to the other. You need 1 line. So then the next time you put them up, you know how to match them. You have 1 beam and you made 2 lines and then 2 lines next to it. So you know how to match them. There's 2 ways how to match it. You make a symbol. So the symbol could be the most simple symbol. Now a line is not a symbol, but 2 lines could be already a symbol. So I make 2 symbols here, 2 symbols there. I'm sorry. Yeah. If I made 2 symbols on 1 beam already, or just one of them, so it already tells me, I guess, where it's meant to be, just those 2 lines. So he's chayiv. So the point, like he said in our Mishnah, the point is not the letters, the point is not the words, the point is the symbol. Rabbi Shimon Oimer, he's going to say now from a pasuk, the same pasuk, but seemingly he's going to be repeating what we said earlier. Let's see. V'asa achas, if I would just say v'asa achas yochel, I would think, achichte is a shame. You have to write the entire word. It's called Hashem. It's like word for word from Tanakama. Meyachas. Meyachas yochel, I would think afilu leikosev alo isachas afilu le'regel echad afilu asal abayis echad benof atamolimer achas. So till now he's quoting the exact words of the Tanakama. So he concludes ha keitzad. So what's the conclusion? Ein echayiv achayasem melacha shekayoytze ba miskayemes. You're chayiv if he did a melacha which something similar would last. Now, what does that mean? You could seemingly match this up with 2 of the earlier opinions, either Tanakama or Rabbi Yehuda. Either it seems more with Rabbi Yehuda, even if right now it's 2 identical letters, so right now it's useless, but if it would have been 2 other letters, identical letters, it would have been useful. It's something which, if I would do something similar to this, it would be useful. So then I'm chayiv. So he's changing the wording of the conclusion from Tanakama, which is changed, seems a bit more like Rabbi Yehuda, the way Rabbi Yehuda is in the Brisa. Now 2 of the same letters are also chayiv. So we'll see soon what is he coming to add, what is he saying different. Rabbi Yosi Oimer. Now, Rabbi Yosi already was quoted before. His opinion in this machlokes, he already said. It seems like Rabbi Yosi is coming just to add another thing we learned from this pasuk. Yeah? Usually you wouldn't say Rabbi Yosi Oimer, it would say Amar Rabbi Yosi. Good? And actually before it says Amar Rabbi Yosi. Fine. V'asa achas v'asa heina. The pasuk says if he did 1 aveira, or if he did many averis. We had this earlier in the Gemara, which would seem like you bring 1 chatas for 1 avera or for many averis. Yeah? So how does that work? So he says, sometimes you could do 1 avera, many averas, and bring 1 chatos. Sometimes you bring a chatas for each avera, and that's why it's achas for 1 avera, 1 chatas. Okay, we'll see soon. Actually, we had it earlier in the Gemara. So it seems like he's just adding another detail connected to this pasuk that we're discussing over here. Why is it written as Rabbi Yosi Oimer? I don't know. Fine. Says the Gemara, Katani Mia. Okay, I brought you a long brisa. You might forget why I brought this brisa. It's a nice brisa. Let's refocus. Yeah? Katani Mia, it says Rabbi Yehuda Oimer afidu leikosev al shtei yosis vein shem echad chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda says 2 of the same letter, you also chayiv. And in the Mishnah he said it has to be 2 different letters. It says Gemara leikasher hadidei hadrabei. In the Mishnah it says only opinion. In the Braisa, it's his Rebbe's opinion. The Tanya, as we see clearly in the Braisa. Rabbi Yomi Mishum Rabban Gamliel. He says in the name of Rabban Gamliel, I feel they cost about the base Zaysis in Shem Mechot. Chayv is Chayv. Ki going, for example, Sheish, Teis, Ror, Gag, Choch. Since you have two letters which are a word, so two of the identical letters, and therefore you're Chayv, and even if you just started a long word and you only wrote two identical letters. Okay, solve the issue with Rabbi Yehuda. But now we have a Bryce. Now let's deal with the Bryce. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda of the Bryce. It's not really the Tanakama, the first Tana. It means an earlier Tana. It could be they don't want to say Rabbi Yehuda because it's not Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Gamliel. Okay, an earlier Bryce. Figure it out. An earlier Tana. Figure it out yourself. So Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda of the Bryce seemingly match. Why? Because they both say if it's something similar can last elsewhere, you're chayiv. So since you do find words which are two of the same letter, so something similar can last, so you're chayiv. Even if this can't last, something similar can last. Maybe you'll tell me, Aleph de Zorcha Ika Binai. Let's say someone wrote a word and he left two identical letters, which those two identical letters are never a word. All the examples we brought were letters which could be a word. He didn't intend that. He was about to write titain or whatever, and he wrote tough. But it is a word. These two letters are a word. What if he wrote two identical letters, which are never a word, like aleph? He could be now the Tanakama sover aleph da zorcha lo yimechayiv. It has to be two identical letters which could form a word. Only these examples that we brought. If you wrote any two letters which are not a word, which can never be a word, then you're not chayiv. And Reb Shimon sover no. But why? If I just wrote I don't know what tzadik, which is never a word, or aleph, I have to find another example. Why should it be chayiv? So the answer will be, when you write a kameya, they have all different types of combinations and words over there, and aleph can also be over there. Begilturi ba'alm in kameyis, chayiv will be chayiv. No, okay, that solves the mystery. Tanakama says it has to be two letters which are a word. That means Rabbi Yehuda and the name of Rabbi Gamliel. And Rabbi Shimon says it could be two letters which are not a word, because they could be a word in a kameya. But the problem is that Rabbi Shimon is more machmir than Tanakam. And in general, in this subject of how complete an Aveda has to be, Rabbi Shimon is more meiko. Says the Gemara, that Rabbi Shimon l'chumna is Rabbi Shimon in this subject. Is he the one who's more strict? When it drills a hole, as we said earlier, the smallest hole you're already chayiv. Hamigarer kolshu, one who files down a piece of wood, and that's similar to machik, the smoothening the hide. He's also chayiv. Ma'abed, one who tans leather, kolshu, the smallest one is chayiv. Hatzar bekli tzura, one who makes a form, a picture on a utensil. Kolshu, the smallest one is chayiv. Reb Shimon, no. It has to be something more important. You have to make the full hole that you're intending to do. You have to file the entire piece of wood you're intending to file. You have to tan the entire hide you're intending to tan. You have to make the entire decoration you're intending to make on the utensil. So we see that he's much more makel in what's considered a complete act. So how could he say that he's more machmir by writing all of a sudden? It's the same logic, the same subject. Says the Gemara, you're right. El Rab Shimon, have to say the other way around. El Rab Shimon also nashmeinon. Ache yichte ves Hashem kuloi. He's saying the opposite. It has to be a malacha that you could leave that way, meaning it has to be a complete word, a word that you intended. Otherwise, you would never leave a different word. You wanted to write one word and you'll leave a different word. It doesn't work that way. I don't want people to make a mistake. So I will never leave it that way. That's what he means. And it has to be the complete word. But how could he say that? Read the whole sentence that he said. What did we just say? Umi Moses Amr Sachi, can you say that? But Tani, look in the Braisa, Reb Shimon Eimer, he quoted the whole beginning of the Tanakh. V'osa achas. It says you have to do, if he did one Aveira, Yochalim, I think, at Shichtav is Hashem Kuloi. It has to be the entire word, Tamalim Meyachas. Even part of it is also Chayiv. So he's coming to say that part of a word is Chayiv. How can you say that his conclusion is that a part of a word is Pater? That you have to write the complete word. Says the Gemara, Toritz ve'imahochi. We have to, since we were stuck, Reb Shimon has to be more makel than the opinions before. So you have to tight shine a bit in his words. When he said it's Hashem Kula, he meant not just the word, the sentence, the pasuk. You might think you have to write the complete sentence. No, one word is good enough. But it has to be a complete word that you intended. If it's not the word you intended, then he's potter, according to Rabbi Shimon. It's fine. Okay. Then Rabbi Yosi comes and says something totally different, seemingly. Rabbi Yosi, I'm sorry. Rabbi Yosi Eimer v'asa achas v'asa heina pom shachai v'achas akulam shachai v'kol achas v'achas. That when it says achas and heina, it means to say sometimes you chayiv one chatas for one avera, and sometimes you can be chayiv one chatas for many averas. How is that possible? Amar Rabbi Yosi b'chalina my time with Rabbi Yosi, not just my time. It means what is he saying? It doesn't mean like what is he learning out from this pasuk? And also, I'm sorry, that my time means how. How can you learn that sometimes one and sometimes many from this pasuk? It says mei achas meheina as in one statement from many. How can you say that it's one, many? How can you say that? So the answer is he says there's two extra words over here with two extra letters. The word achas and the word heina are both extra, and the mems are both extra. And therefore he reads them in many ways. He reads them achas, heina, achas me heina, heina me achas. He reads it all different ways because all words are extra over here. So how does he read it? He goes like this. He says like this, achas me achas, heina me heina. All this is extra. He didn't have to write not achas, not heina, not with the mems. So everything is extra. We learn from everything. Achas shehi heina. Sometimes there's one that's many, veheina shehi achas, which that's what he said. That he said that sometimes you chayiv one for many, sometimes you chayiv one for each. So we'll touch soon when that is. And then he also agrees to what we said before about achas me achas, achas shimon me achas shemi shimon. Interesting why he says shemi shimon. He doesn't necessarily mean dafke if it's shem. Actually, yeah. I mean, if you wanted to write a full word, part of it is also something. 2 letters is also something. Although he says there's only 2 letters, it could be 2 marks. Fine. But if you're writing a word, then 2 letters or something. So that's like all the other opinions said. Heina is obvious. Which many details in one Aveda could be chayiv on each Av Melacha. Meheina, there are from those many you have more details, which is Toilus, all the different activities which are compared to the obvious Melachos of Shabbos. Now going back to what we said before, what does it mean one that's many, many that's one? What does that apply to? Achas sheheina, one that's many, Zod in Shabbos of Shigas Melachos. If you knew it's Shabbos, but you didn't know that each Melacha is an Isser. Each Melacha was another mistake. So it's one Isser, Shabbos, but you chayiv for each Melacha. Heina she'achas, how could you have many that's one? So the other way around. Shigas Shabbos, you forgot that it's Shabbos. There's other Melachas, you knew that the Melachas are a problem. So it's many Melachas, but you chayiv one Karmel Chatas. So he goes like this. Achas me'achas. The mem is extra. You're right. That comes to teach us that part of your initial intention is also chayiv. Let me just pick the example that Tanakam over here brought. 2 different letters from one long word. You're chayiv. Fine, that's me'achas. Heina comes to say you could have one Aveda that's split into many. Shabbos is one Aveda. Lamites Melachos. Me'heina, you have even more that are born from them, the Toldos. Fine. Although although you're not chayiv a separate one for each, but you're chayiv. You're chayiv on them. Fine. Now, how many chatois are you chayiv? For that, we learn from the fact that the actual words achas and heina are extra. So we read it achas meheina heina meyachas, which means you could be chayiv one chatos for many averis. Achas sheheina, you can have. I'm sorry, the other way around. You can have many chatos for one avera. Shabbos is one avera, but you chayiv for each malacha. If that was your mistake, the malacha you knew it was Shabbos. Or the other way around, you forgot that at Shabbos you did many melachas, but you have only one because your mistake was Shabbos. So that's what Rabbi Yossi is coming to say. He's coming to add. This is not the only thing we learn from this pasuk. There's many other details we learn from this pasuk. That's what Rabbi Yossi is coming to add. Right? Okay. Now we have the question. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Matzino Shem Kotam Mishim Godel, that we find sometimes that you could write a long word and two of the letters are already something, and therefore you're chayiv. What's the example? Shem Shimon. If you write Shimon with a regular mem, it doesn't spell shame. Shame has to be a shlos mem, and if a final mem. And if that would be, let's say, in a pasuk, you wouldn't be yotze. It's a wrong mem. So how could you be chayiv for that? Me dami are they similar mem? The shame sosum. The word shame has a final mem. Mem the shimon pasuach. So how could you say that you're chayiv? Amar Rav Chisda Zeisi matters from this we see sosum vasoi pasuach. If you had a word in the Torah which was supposed to be a final letter, and you made it the open letter, kosher, you kosher. So the fedish nisht. Mesim, we see in a brayso clearly not like that. Uchsav tom, you have to write the mezuzah and the mezuzah in this case, and from that for tefillin and for sefer Torah, it has to be chsav tom. Write them, but you divide it into two words. Because sav tom, write complete. Shtei ksiva tam, it has to be a complete writing. Shelichtiv alfin einin alfin. Make sure that if you pronounce the letters similarly, don't mix up the letters. Basin, coffin, basin. If they look alike, make sure they're clearly distinguished. Gamin, sadin, gamin. A gimel and a tzaddik, I guess it's upside down. A gimel could be like an upside down tzaddik. So make sure that you don't do it upside down. Dalsin, ration, dalsin. A dal has that piece on the back. Make sure you don't make them similar. Hein, chesen, hein. Make sure the hay and the ches are not similar. That the foot of the hay is divided from the top. Vav in yudin, vav, and make sure the length of the vav is enough that it doesn't look like a yud. Zainin, nunin, zainin. So especially if according to those opinions that make a nun like a zayin, and then they bend the bottom, so that's quite similar. So don't differentiate. Don't differentiate. I'm sorry, differentiate between them. Make sure that the zayin looks as a zayin and the nun like a nun. Tessin, payin, tessin. A test and a pay also can be a bit similar. You just flip the test to the side. It's similar to a pay. Make sure you don't flip it. Make sure you make it the right way. Fine. Kfufin, shooting kfufin. If you have the letters which have a long letter, a lange chaf and a lange nun and a lange tzadik, don't make them regular. There has to be a final letter. And then you have, 1 second. Memin, samchin, memin. A mem and a samach, so we're talking about a final mem, which could be a bit similar to a samach. This is round, this is square. So don't make them similar. Psuchin, stumin. You cannot make a final mem, which is closed, like open mem, and vice versa. It says clearly you're not allowed to, you're not yotze. Or parsha psucha, if the ending of the parsha is, if they have those parshas, the samachs and the pei, so the pei means that it's till the end of the line, it's open. So the yasena stuma, don't start another line on that same line. Or stuma the yasena psucha, it's supposed to start again on that same line, it should be a closed opening between the two paragraphs. So then make sure it's not open. Ksava kashira, Or don't change them. The shira has a special way to write it, with the spaces in the middle of the line, the different types of shiras, either shira sayam, which you have like one, then one in the middle, and then one in the middle, or like Hazini, just half of the page. So if you wrote a regular part of the Torah like a shira with those spaces, or you should cause of a shira kayitsu, but you wrote the shira like a regular part of the Torah, so then again it's possible. Or you should cause a shaloi bidyoy if you wrote with not with proper ink and not with black ink, you wrote with colorful ink. Or you should cause of a askaris bezov. You wanted to make it very respected. You want to make the yud kivavki with gold. All that is possible. Hareli gonez, you have to bury them if you cannot carve out the yud kivavki and rewrite it. So you can't erase yud kivavki. You have to bury it. So what do we see? That it's possible. Says the Gemara, you're right. That's the halacha. But there's a different opinion, and our Mishnah follows a different opinion. Who the Amar ki Haitana? Our Mishnah is following a different opinion. Tani Davidim Seira Imer, never b'sheni v'niskeyem, b'shishi u'nesacha, b'shvi ki mishpatam, harei mem yud mem mayim. In the Torah, is not mentioned about pouring water on the side of the Mizbeach and Sukkot, Nisuch HaMayim. But there's a remez. The remez is that you have, when the pasuk repeats the same, like the small difference, but every day, the entire length of the carbon of the different days of Sukkot, each day just the oxen are one less, so but everything else is the same. But the wording sometimes are slightly different. So once it says v'niskehem, usually it says v'niska, and it's pouring. One place it says v'niskehem, and they're pouring, an extra mem. The yud is there, but the main thing is the mem. That's the extra thing that's added over here. One time it says v'nisacheha with a yud, their pourings. It's the same thing as all other days, but it's extra yud. And b'shmi, instead of saying kamishpat, like the rule is, it's kamishpatam, like their rule. Harei mem yud mem, have an extra mem and a yud and a mem. Mayim. We can from here, Remez, we see a hint, l'nisach hamayim min ha-Torah. Now, the Torah is writing you a hint for mayim, and it's using a final mem. So we see that a final mem can replace a regular mem. Umi the pasuach vasoy sosum kosher, since a regular mem can replace a final mem, sosum nami, sosum vasoy pasuach kosher. The other way around is also kosher. Interesting. Like l'chayra, it's different. This is writing the Torah. This is a limud from the Torah. Fine. Fine. Like what I'm saying is like it's a machloikis, as if according to us, which we say that you cannot change a final mem for a regular mem, then you wouldn't be able to learn this limud. Okay? Fine. Okay, we'll leave this for tomorrow. The Gemara is going to get involved in this in the discussion about, like this, people used to write with the old Hebrew writing, which there's no difference between a final letter and a regular letter. So we'll see soon that although that's the way they used to write, but the way we write today, the Ashuri writing, is the original writing that was given on Har Sinai. And there were both letters, the final one and the regular one. And okay, so we'll have a discussion about which one was the original. We thought one way, and therefore we had a question on this whole rice and on the proof. And then we came to a conclusion that what we said over here is true, that according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Masechta, they're both equal, and therefore if you change them, you're still chai. So, to summarize what we said, we had Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah which said that you're chayiv on Shabbos if you wrote a long word and you wrote only two different letters, you're chayiv. In a brayse, there's a bunch of different opinions. Some different opinions. And Rabbi Yehuda says over there that if you write two of the same letter, you're also chayiv. So the Gemara, the brayse is not saying his own opinion. The brayse is saying Rabbi Gamliel's opinion. He himself holds that it has to be two different letters. Now, two of the same letter means two of the same letter, which could be a word. So the examples are the word in the Brisa: Sheish, Teis, Ror, Gag, and Choch. If you wrote those two letters, you even if that was not your intention. And the comment says, no, if that wasn't your intention, it has to be two different letters, which is more likely to write a word. Fine. Rabbi Yossi in the Brisa says the same thing that the Mishnah he said, that it could be just a mark. And then Rabbi Shimon seemingly repeats what the Tanakama said. Tanakama learned this out from a pasuk. The pasuk speaks about a korban chatas. It says that if you did an avera, you bring a korban chatas, and then the Mishnah repeats, if you did from the many averas, you're chayiv. From one sounds like part, so you do one complete avera or part. So it has to be a part which could be meaningful, could be useful. So it has to be two letters from a complete word. Now Rabbi Shimon says the same beginning. That says achas, it says me'achas. So the conclusion is that it has to be a malacha which similar to it can last. That seems like even two identical letters, as long as it forms a word. So it's like Rabbi Yehuda of the Brisa. Why is he arguing? Now you might tell me that he's saying even two of the same letter, which are not a word, because in Kamei sometimes they use two of the same letters. But then it'll come out that Rabbi Shimon is more machmir in what's considered a complete avera. And in this subject, we see he's more mekel. Usually he says that it has to be like a complete act, a complete tanning, a complete whole, whatever you intended to do, not part. By a clothing, Tesis says you're making a new clothing, so there has to be even a bit of it is something because you made something new. However, when you're tanning, you only preparing it, has to prepare the whole thing because the whole thing is here. If you didn't prepare the whole thing, you didn't do anything. The same as whenever you're fixing something, it has to be the whole thing. Whenever you're making something, it could be part. But the point is that the direction is that it has to be that more is considered preparing, not less. Says the Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Shimon holds that you would think if it says achas, that you have to write the entire pasuk, the entire sentence. Comes the pasuk and says you have to write the whole word, but it has to be a full word. Part of a word in achai. Fine. Then Rabbi Yossi seems to just tell us, there's more we can learn from this pasuk. It's not just me achas. The whole word achas, heino, me achas, is all extra. And therefore we learn many things from this. Achas, me achas, like all the above that we said, that if you did part of the avera, you're also chayiv, it could be complete, fine. Heina, me heina, we learn from that. Heina, that there are many details, there are many av malachis, me heina, there are many details which I learned from them, fine. Then achas meheina, heina meyachas. We learn like this, that sometimes you do one avera, chilul Shabbos, but you have many chatois for each malach. If you knew it was Shabbos and you forgot the malachas. Or sometimes it's heina meyachas, you get or I'm not sure which way you read it, but sometimes heina sheyachas, sometimes you have many averas, many malachas, but you have only one chatos. If you forgot it was Shabbos, but you knew the malachas, you bring only one chatos for all the malachas. Fine? Then we discussed that Rabbi Yehuda brought an example, or Tanakam and the Brisa brought an example that Shein Mishimoin. That if you wrote Shimoin and you just wrote Shin Mem, you're already chayiv because it's already a word. So it's not a word. Shem you have to write with a final mem. And Shimon is with a regular mem. And there's a clear Brisa which says it in the Sefer Torah that Tefillah Mezuzah, that it has to be the right thing. It has to be a proper final mem or a regular mem. You can't change them. Says, what are you right? That's what the Brisa says, that's the halacha, but there's an opinion which says no, that you could switch them. Because there's an opinion which learns from a final mem and a yud and a final mem to the word mayim, nisach hamayim and sukkis. We learn it from the extra final mem, two extra final mems and a yud. So according to him, you could exchange them, and therefore you're chayiv just writing shin with a regular mem, although you intended to write shimoin. Although shin would usually have to have a final mem, you're chayiv with a regular mem as well.